My son and I have a strange hobby. It provides us with a lot of satisfaction, but it's hard to describe to people. We like to help people figure out if an EV is right for them. And that usually starts with a series of questions to them about what's their daily drive look like? What's their trip situation look like? How much do they haul around? Where do they live? Do they have access to charging? Some people are not a good fit for EVs, but most, if you're willing to make a few changes, you can enjoy the EV lifestyle and enjoy the minimal maintenance that they require and the fun of silent, quick driving that makes you grin. My name is Brian, and this is my Kia EV9. It's the Land trim model, and it is a 6-seat, all-electric SUV. So I think when you're shopping for an electric vehicle, you need to know what your needs are, and you're likely not really need to be that focused on having 300 miles range, even though your intuition will tell you that's the most important thing. If you have a conversation with someone that actually drives an electric vehicle, they will probably tell you that that has just disappeared for them as they've driven their electric vehicles. In fact, there was an interesting article that found that EV drivers almost have no range anxiety at all. It's only people curious about EV vehicles that really suffer from range anxiety. The rest of us, once we've done a road trip or we've run the vehicle down to whatever your barrier is for, well, I'd never let it get that low, maybe it's 10%, and you realize the car still functions fine. It's been warning me for the last 30 miles that I needed to find a charging spot. It's not like you're just gonna stop one day and not know why. It's really easy and really fun. And if you go into it knowing your options, knowing the downsides, knowing that you need to find a charging station, but that if it's across the street from where you work, it's not that big a deal to walk across the street and plug the car in before you start a shift. It's really fun. I recommend them. I've had an interest in alternative fuel cars for quite a while. I was a mechanic in my earlier career. As a mechanic, I had learned a lot from my grandfather, who was an aircraft mechanic. And we mostly put together, a vehicle out of airplane parts in his backyard. And the goal of that vehicle was to have some sort of alternative, but at the time batteries just wasn't feasible to have it run on batteries, but we wanted to do something unique with it. It ended up we did do something unique with it because it never got a power plant, and we towed it with a mini bike to the top of the hill and rode it down and tested the brakes, and that as far as that project got. But I've been interested first in natural gas cars. I was looking at I think it's a Honda Civic, and I almost bought one of those, and I've since found out natural gas is not natural, and it's really methane gas, and it's really not as clean as the natural gas industry would like us all to believe. So I feel like I kind of dodged a bullet on that one. I also had an opportunity one time to participate in a week-long Today Show segment that was called the Great American Gas Challenge. And that was at a time when gas prices were pretty high, not compared to today, but we thought they were high. And the scenario was they gave 3 families the same budget to go on a vacation across the country, driving from Santa Monica to New York and onto the plaza. And with the same budget, would the family that drove the most efficient car have more money to have more fun than the midsize or the luxury vehicle? So I had already investigated the hybrid Honda that we were driving. I knew quite a bit about it, and I was excited to buy one. I didn't end up buying one, but I did enjoy being on that segment and touting the benefits of hybrid vehicles. So the last car I owned that took gas and required that I go visit the gas station, which is my least favorite chore, was actually a plug-in hybrid. It was a Honda Clarity, and it got 48 miles of all-electric range. And I bought it at a time when to get a 300 or 250 mile electric range car was a very high premium. So I bought that car as sort of a holdover because I was only commuting a short distance to work, and for all intents and purposes, this would be a fully electric car for me, except when on a long road trip. And it was a good car. The car previous to that was an all petroleum gas car, was an Infiniti G35 Sport. And that was the first new car I'd ever bought. And it was thirsty, as I remember, fun to drive. But when I started looking into the Chevrolet Bolt, I was one of the first people on the list to get one when they came out. I was supposedly the holder of a coveted reservation, which didn't really amount to anything helpful in the way of purchasing the car. But that's what I had my eye on, and that's what I was excited to go pick up. Primarily, the changes for me from going gas to electric haven't been so much financial as they have been improvement in the quality of life. I really didn't like the trip to the gas station, but I also played the game of driving across town, waiting in line at Costco to save a few extra cents per gallon. In fact, I used an app called Gas Buddy to hunt down the cheapest price I could. So even though I was scrimping and saving pennies on the gas, it was really just more about the idea of not paying more than I had to for gas. And again, didn't love that task. Once we got an electric car, my first electric car was a Bolt. I owned it briefly and then my wife stole it from me. Once we got our first electric car, we really enjoyed charging it home, not doing the gas station runs, not doing oil changes and smog checks and all that comes with having a gas car. I did not miss any of that. And this is coming from somebody with a mechanical background that oftentimes I did my own oil changes. I taught my kids how to do oil changes, how to do brake jobs, because I wanted them to know you're probably never going to do this again, but when you pay that $60, you'll know you're paying for something you don't want to do. So when we first started looking at the Bolt, and I took my wife and she was willing to go along and look at it, pretend to be interested, all those nice things, she said, I can't drive this car. And I'm like, right, it's my car. You won't need to drive it. And she goes, well, as a realtor, I can't show up in this car. And I said, that's fine. This is my car. Well, then she borrowed it one time when her car was in the shop. And at the time she was driving, I think it was a big Nissan minivan thing. Very thirsty vehicle. And again, as a realtor, she was driving a lot of miles. Well, she drove the Bolt one day and realized she didn't have to go to the gas station. And that was kind of the end of me having a Bolt. I said, what about, this perception as a realtor that you have to drive a fancy car? Again, she was driving a minivan. But she had aspirations for a fancier car to pull up and impress and drive people around in. And her takeaway from that was she had a client that had looked at a house sort of near Agoura and then come back over to Newbury Park and gone back over, wanted to go and look at one over on the Agoura side of town. Oh, I don't want to use your gas. My wife said, no worries, we're driving on sunshine. So that became kind of her mantra for the realtor that drives on sunshine. Now, realtors don't often drive their clients around anymore, but my wife still enjoys her e-tron, and she has the appearance of pulling up in a really nice car and the joy of not going to the gas station. When I first heard about the Ioniq 5 and the EV6, it was when they were first shown as concept cars at the LA Auto Show, and then there was a EV auto show that said they were going to have pre-production cars available to get in. Now, at the time, that was the first time that I had ever heard of a manufacturer letting you get up and touch, much less get in, a pre-production car. My son is 6'7", and we like hanging out with each other. But one of the games we've played over the years at the LA Auto Show is, will Spencer fit? Well, when we first heard wind that there might be an EV6 and an Ioniq 5 that we could look at, and then got there and the doors were open and people were climbing in this car, we were blown away. So I really liked the EV6 better from a looks perspective. I thought it was sleek and really good looking car. And the Ioniq 5 is kind of quirky and got angles, and it was a weird looking car. But then we tried to see if Spencer would fit, and the EV6, that pre-production car, he got in the passenger seat, and the grab handle, he couldn't hold his head straight. He was like this, and I'm like, well, that's out. That's not going to work. And then we got in the Ioniq 5, and it was the most amazing vehicle inside in terms of the space. It just felt like a wide open feeling. If you ever get a chance to sit in a car that's more like a cockpit, if that's for you, great. But I have been a bigger person than I am now in the past, and carried more weight, and enjoyed having enough room to be able to sort of spread out and move my arms. And similarly, like I said, my son and I like to road trip together, and the Ioniq 5 just defied its outside dimensions with the space inside, both in the front seat and the back seat. My son could adjust the driver's seat for his position, climb around and sit behind himself in that position, and have plenty of room for a road trip. So the Ioniq 5 was a car I thought I would never get rid of until something really cool came out. I thought that really cool thing might be the Fisker Ocean, but that's a whole nother story. My spouse found out that the Ioniq 5 wasn't rated to tow my RV trailer. Its rating the first year was like 1,300 pounds, unless the car was delivered to the UK, and then it was 2,300 pounds. And I'm like, I don't think the forces of gravity are that different in the UK. Still, my trailer's dry weight is around 2,600 pounds. And once my spouse did the math and she realized I was sort of over the specified weight limit, she got nervous about it. And I was like, well, I could drive your e-tron. And she said, no, not driving my e-tron. And I said, well, the only other thing is this 3-row EV9. And I really liked the Ioniq 9 better. And so then I started looking at the EV9. My son is really good at defining the right solution for a problem. And he's like, no, that's not the right car for you. You need to get an EV9. And then when I saw that I could get one for 30 grand off retail by buying a barely used one, it was a slam dunk. I don't need the 3 rows most of the time. It's empty. But when I do, and I want to put the grandkid in there, and my daughter and son-in-law, we can all fit nicely and go someplace together. When I purchased this car, the EV9 was extremely hard to find. It was a time in the market when this particular car had been out about 9 months. They weren't coming off lease. People hadn't done that, wait a minute, I have to plug it in thing where they return it with 50 miles. So it was hard to find, especially in the trim I wanted with options as I wanted them. So it was a wide search I put out, and when I found the car I wanted, and it was about $1,500 or $2,000 under market, and it was at a Chrysler dealer. It was a lot of strikes from my perspective as somebody that guides a lot of people to finding used EVs, but the dealer seemed honest, and it turns out they were. It was a super clean deal. It was as represented. And yeah, I don't really have any major complaints. They were not as transparent about the condition of the vehicle as the shipper was. The shipper went over the car with a fine-tooth comb and took pictures of absolutely every wart, which is what I asked the dealer to do. I'm like, you know, some of these online retailers will do a 360 degree of the car and zoom in on any little wart that you're going to point out, which I think is how it should all be. But this dealer, all they kept saying is, this car is new, you're going to love it. And I'm like, I know I'm going to love it, but I also know it's got to have a something. So the dealer was good. The experience was not one I would recommend for the faint-hearted. It was a little nerve-wracking to have the car on a truck. I tried to send them like an AirTag type device just before the car got put on the trailer, but it didn't arrive in time because I wanted to sort of keep my finger on the pulse of where it was. Some of the things I like the best about the EV9 are that spacious feeling that I talked about with the Ioniq 5. It has that very open feel to it in the cockpit, and in addition, when I take it camping and I'm pulling my trailer, not only do I have the confidence of knowing it's within the ratings of the vehicle, but I can also flop down the third row seats and I have tons of space back there and 2 extra seats. So it's really that more than enough space that I really love about it. And it's also kind of fun. I find a lot of people, when I take this car out and I show it, people don't know that, one, there is a 3-row electric vehicle, and 2, that this is a Kia. I had a number of people, I showed it at the Banana Festival, and for whatever reason, where it was positioned, got a lot of foot traffic, and these were a lot of people towing a lot of kids. And they can appreciate having those extra seats for car seats and friends and whatever, but they were baffled by the fact that this was a Kia, which I think many people think is a junky Korean car. And if they know it's Korean, they just know it's junky. And then when they saw this and then found out it was electric, between those two things, they were amazed that this vehicle even existed. So it's one of those best kept secrets, I think, that the companies don't really advertise in a way that cuts through to the market that's out there buying suburban size vehicles and just assuming they have to pay for, 15 miles per gallon or whatever. And it's really fun to drive. It's got a boost mode that gives you silly amounts of horsepower, and just for safety reasons, sometimes I like to accelerate quickly. Just safety. When I started looking around at vehicles that were easier for an electric vehicle to tow, in that they did not have a large wind load on them, I found a fold-up trailer called the Trail Manor. And much like a pop-up tent camper, it has a low profile when you're driving, and when you get to where you want to go, it opens up several different ways, including a bathroom door that pops up and fits into itself, and really is a very capable vehicle despite being a low profile and adding very little in the way of wind load. So I got a Trail Manor, which are not very common vehicles, but there's a dealer nearby that I found, and so purchased that vehicle. And I've gone pretty much every month. I do one weekend trip, and I go within 100 miles of my house are amazing campsites right on the beach. If they were beachfront property, you would be paying multi-million dollars to have that spot. And so because I have vehicle to load on both the Ioniq 5 and my Kia EV9, I'm able to run the trailer entirely off of the car, including the roof air. I got a soft start device on the roof air, so the initial load doesn't peak the car out at its 1800 watts or so. And I've been in camping situations where it was triple digits in Malibu Canyon one time, and I ran the air all weekend, and it cost me, I don't know, maybe 10 miles of range. And it's been a joy. I don't need campsites with hookups because I bring my hookups with me. I've found that I can lose about half my range if I keep my speed right around 62. I don't go over 62. And driving the coast, you don't get a lot of people angry at you driving 62 as long as you stay to the right and you make room and so forth. So I've driven from my house in Thousand Oaks to the Costco charging station in San Luis Obispo. I was down to about 2% when I pulled in. I don't recommend that for most people, especially if you're towing a trailer, but I find it's kind of a fun game to play. It's fun to watch the range estimate and the miles to go back and forth. And it's really easy if you get nervous to just slow down a little bit to 55, and all of a sudden you're going to make it without any worries at all. And so, yeah, I get about 150 miles, and that means I'm going to San Diego this weekend. I'm going to stop once just so when I pull into the campground, I'll have enough battery to last me overnight and not have to worry about it. But I could make it there without a stop. For those folks that are curious about EVs and want to find out where to learn more about them, I have a few words of wisdom. One of them is, don't expect to get any meaningful information from the car dealership. Unless all they do, like Rivian or Tesla, is sell electric vehicles, the car dealerships don't know anything about the electric vehicles. Generally speaking, it's gotten better, but not by a lot. They don't want to sell you an electric vehicle because you're not going to come back in for service, and that's where they really make their money. And they're not going to know more than you will know if you spend maybe half an hour or an hour watching YouTube videos. You're going to know way more than the car salesman that sits in that lot day after day. So where I would recommend that you go is you go to an EV advocacy group. I'm a member of a fairly large group, maybe 200 or so members. 80 of us are really active and do outreach events at street fairs, and sometimes it'll be a banana festival or a boat show. And if you see some of those groups, we're not scary people. Generally, we're showing off the cars we own. We're not trying to sell them because we got to drive them home. And we will tell you our real world experience of what it's like to drive that particular car. Most of us, if you ask nicely, will let you sit in our car. We might even let you take it for a spin if the circumstances allow. But then you're going to get some real information from a real driver who's probably driven that vehicle and maybe even another model before it. And they're going to be able to tell you what they like and don't like about that vehicle in an honest, meaningful way. If you don't happen to have one of those organizations near you, we're very fortunate in the state of California that there are a number of organizations out there that have well-informed people hoping that you call them and ask them questions about either buying an EV, taking advantage of the incentives on used EVs that still exist, finding the right EV for you. One of them is EVs for All, which is actually a national organization, but there are a number of them out there, and they are funded by generally federal dollars that cost you nothing, and they will help you all the way up to filling out a form to get a rebate, making sure that you fill it out correctly and get that money back. And they're there to help, and they're great. I would recommend that you look into those organizations, call those nice folks up, and they'll help you out.